For years, the truth stayed hidden. The victims forgotten, the cases left cold, until science revealed what time could not. This is Decades in the Dark, where cold cases are brought back to light. It began like any other Tuesday after Christmas, December 27, 2011, Troy, Missouri. Snow still clung to driveways, and Christmas lights blinked in the cold. Inside a quiet home on Sumac Drive, 42-year-old Betsy Faria was thinking about the new year. After years of fighting breast cancer, she'd finally finished another round of chemo. She was tired, but she was hopeful, ready to rebuild her strength and her life with her husband Russ and 2 daughters. Russ was her steady support through everything: the treatments, the fear, the nights she couldn't sleep. He'd done everything to make her smile again, but someone else had been watching Betsy's fight. Someone who called herself Betsy's best friend. Her name was Pam Hupp, and Betsy had no idea the woman she leaned on in her illness was already planning her death. Pam was friendly, attentive, the kind of person who seemed eager to help. She brought casseroles, offered rides, and told everyone how much she cared about Betsy. When Betsy became too weak to drive to treatment, Pam volunteered every time. But her help came with control. She wanted to know where Betsy was, who she saw, what she planned to do with her money. And when Pam found out about Betsy's $150,000 life insurance policy, she began suggesting a safer option. She told Betsy that Russ might not be great with finances, that she could hold the money temporarily and give it to Betsy's daughters later. Betsy was exhausted, recovering from chemo, and trusted the woman who'd been by her side. So, just before Christmas, on December 23, 2011, she signed the paperwork naming Pam Hupp as the sole beneficiary. It was supposed to be temporary. 4 days later, Betsy was dead. On December 27th, Pam offered to drive Betsy home from her mother's house. Russ was out at his weekly game night with friends, something Pam knew well. She told police she dropped Betsy off around 7 p.m. and left right away. She didn't. Cell phone records later showed Pam stayed in the area for nearly half an hour after she claimed to have driven off. Investigators now believe that was when she killed her. At 9:40 that night, Russ came home to a nightmare. Betsy was lying on the living room floor, her slippers kicked off. She had been stabbed more than 50 times, her chest, arms, neck, and head slashed in a frenzy. The knife was still buried in her throat. There was blood everywhere, on the walls, the carpet, and even the furniture. But certain details stood out to investigators later. Pillows and a blanket pulled near her body, objects rearranged, and wounds that looked exaggerated. Not random, but intentional. Pam Hupp had staged the scene. The overkill, the sheer number of stab wounds, was meant to look like a domestic explosion, the kind of rage-fueled attack police associate with a jealous spouse. She even pulled a blanket up around Betsy's face, as if to make the scene look oddly tender, to suggest a husband's remorse after a fit of anger. It was performance, a deliberate manipulation to make police believe Russ had snapped. In shock, Russ dialed 911. "Oh my God! My wife killed herself! She stabbed herself!" His voice was breaking. He couldn't process what he was seeing. The woman he loved brutally murdered on their living room floor. When officers arrived, they saw the chaos and fell right into Pam's trap. There were no signs of forced entry, and with the staging suggesting passion and rage, their eyes turned to the husband. Despite his airtight alibi, multiple witnesses, receipts from Arby's, and phone calls proving he was miles away, Russ was charged with first-degree murder. Pam Hupp told detectives she was the last to see Betsy alive. She said Betsy was terrified of Russ. She even claimed Betsy told her, "If anything happens to me, it was him." None of it was true, but it was exactly what police wanted to hear. At trial, the prosecution painted Russ as an angry husband tired of caring for his sick wife. The jury never learned Pam was the new insurance beneficiary. They never saw her phone data or the timeline that made her story impossible. In 2013, Russ Faria was convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Pam smiled for reporters outside the courthouse, saying she was glad justice was done. She still had the $150,000 Betsy left behind. Not $1 went to Betsy's daughters. 2 years later, new attorneys reopened the case. They combed through every file, every statement, every phone record. And what they found exposed the truth. Pam's story changed with every interview. Her cell phone pinged near Betsy's home long after she said she left. And her claim that Betsy feared Russ was contradicted by everyone who knew them. In 2015, Russ's conviction was overturned. A new trial revealed the deception, and Russ was acquitted. He walked free. But Betsy's real killer was still out there, and she was unraveling. By 2016, Pam's carefully built story was falling apart. Reporters were digging into her lies. Russ was suing the police and prosecutors who believed her, and Pam knew investigators might reopen Betsy's murder. She needed another distraction, one that would make her look like a victim again. On August 16, 2016, Pam Hupp set out to find someone to use. She drove around O'Fallon, Missouri, approaching strangers and offering cash to help her film a Dateline reenactment. That's how she met Louis Gumpenberger, a 33-year-old man living with disabilities from a car accident years earlier. Louis had difficulty walking and trusting his instincts. Pam told him she worked for Dateline NBC and offered $1,000 if he'd help act out a 911 call at her house. He agreed, never realizing he was walking into a trap. Once she had him inside, Pam shot him multiple times. Then she called 911, pretending to be hysterical, claiming Louis had tried to kidnap her at knife point. She said Russ Faria had sent him. When police arrived, Louis was dead. In his pocket were $900 in cash and a handwritten note that read, "Kidnap Pam Hupp. Get $10,000 at Faria's house." The story made no sense, and investigators quickly saw why. The bills matched serial numbers from Pam's own bank withdrawal earlier that morning. Surveillance footage showed her following Louis from his apartment complex. And the note? Written on paper from her own home printer. It wasn't self-defense. It was staging. Again. A desperate, sloppy repeat of the act that once fooled detectives. Pam had murdered an innocent man to frame Russ for revenge and to throw suspicion off herself forever. Pam Hupp was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. She entered an Alford plea, admitting there was enough evidence to convict her, and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. That conviction finally cracked open Betsy's case. In 2021, prosecutors charged Pam Hupp with first-degree murder for the death of Betsy Faria. She still denies everything, but the lies, the phone records, and the staged scenes tell a story she can't erase. Betsy Faria's daughters never received the money Pam promised. Russ Faria lost years of his life behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. And Pam Hupp, the woman who once called herself Betsy's guardian angel, became one of the most infamous betrayers in modern true crime. Betsy trusted Russ with her heart. She depended on Pam during her illness. Only one of them truly loved her. The other turned that trust into murder. Sometimes the monster isn't hiding in the dark. Sometimes it's sitting beside you, smiling. This is Decades in the Dark, where science brings the past to light. Subscribe for more stories where justice never expires.